I'm here in Singapore at the Asia-Pacific Agri-Food Innovation Summit, and I'm joined by Michal Klar from Better Bite Ventures to talk all about alt protein investment trends in Asia-Pacific and a new initiative from Better Bite targeting very early stage startups called First Bite. So 2 or 3 years ago, people were throwing silly money at alt protein companies, and today startups are really struggling to raise money. What's changed?
I think a few things changed. Obviously macro situation changed. So I think the main driver of a drop of investment in alt protein is actually coming from overall VC market correction. So if you look at the percentages year over year, how much it dropped, it's roughly in line, a little bit more than what we see overall in the VC market. But I think a few other things changed as well. I think it's fair to say there was some initial hype in this industry, and this is now subsiding. So we see healthy correction, in fact, where investors are looking for companies with stronger fundamentals. So I think, overall, this trend is healthy, although it's of course not easy, neither for startups or investors in this environment.
So what has happened to valuations over that period?
So we have seen several things. So definitely valuations came down, but it very much depends on the stage. So later stage valuations, we are talking Series B, C, and growth stage, definitely went down. Earlier valuations, pre-seed and seed, are somewhat less impacted. There's some correction there, but maybe not to the same extent. We have really seen much longer time needed to close the rounds, and this is driven by several things. I think investors put more scrutiny, spend more time on due diligence, but there's also simply less deals happening. So investors have a luxury of spending more time with less startups, and unfortunately this often prolongs the timelines, which of course in this funding environment is difficult for founders.
So global investment in alternative proteins fell 42% in 2022, with a sharp drop in North America. This is according to the Good Food Institute, whereas according to their figures, investment in the Asia-Pacific region went up. Why do you think that was? Or was this just some kind of blip? Or
I think there are two things to mention here. So one is, it was definitely this specific number and growth in 2022 was driven by several larger deals. So our portfolio company Tyndall raised the largest Series A in this sector, $100 million. Another company in China called Starfield raised 100 million Series B, and these two deals alone
kind of skewed the figures a bit.
Skewed the figures a bit.
Yeah.
But I think another perspective here is that longer-term trend is definitely increase of Asia-Pacific share in a global pie of alternative protein investments. And so today we are at about maybe 10% or 12%. Roughly speaking. Of course, this year's numbers are not yet final, so we'll see where it ends. And I think what's very important to mention is that with this 10% share, there's a huge gap between amount of dollars coming to Asia Pacific and actual consumption trends in the region. So about 40% of meat and more than 70% of seafood is actually made in Asia Pacific, but only about 10% of the dollars are coming here. So what we are trying to do at Better Bite is to close this gap in early stages and encourage more global investors to come to the region so this gap can be closed.
So in the US, there's a lot of soul searching about plant-based meat. Why has the market stalled? Why is it going backwards in some areas? Do you feel like, from your conversations, that we've kind of hit a wall when it comes to the technology underpinning alternative meats, or is the softening in some markets more about, macroeconomic factors or cultural barriers, or do the products just need to get better?
The products definitely need to get better, but I think they are getting better. So I have seen personally some innovations both inside our portfolio and outside of our portfolio. On my recent travels in Europe and US, I tried several different whole cut new generation products. They're not perfect, it's still work in progress, but you can really feel, or at least in my opinion, they are a clear step up from the previous generation of products. I think the challenges in this macroeconomic environment, the price is another very important factor. So how do we bring these innovations that often are high-tech innovations at the price point that is acceptable by consumers in the difficult economic environment.
Can you talk a little bit about, so you're an early stage investor, about what's kind of exciting you in this space really, any particular categories or themes?
So we invest in Asia-Pacific early stage startups, and there are several themes around our investment and things that are really exciting. One is localized products. So we like to see products that are catering to local cuisines. There are so many cuisines in Asia. Look at Indian cuisine and Japanese cuisine, they're completely different. We need companies and products and approaches that are really fully localized. So that's kind of one of the themes that we are seeing. Another one is actually utilizing the benefits of being in the region that has some of better unit economics and access to talent in certain fields. A good example would be precision fermentation opportunity in India. So we invested in one of the leaders in this space, early leaders, a company called Fix44. And they can take advantage of the fact that there's excess capacity for fermentation used for pharma industry in India, and also access to talent at prices or price point that is more affordable than in other places. So there's a big opportunity to leverage that.
So you've got this initiative called First Bite. Could you tell me what that is?
Sure. So at First Bite, we are supporting founders at very early stages, literally at the idea stage. So often, in some cases, when we started to talk to founders, they haven't even incorporated the company. So it's really all about finding these talented founders with the great ideas and being very often their very first institutional investor.
So what are the pros and cons of handing over money at such an early stage?
So there are two ways of thinking about it. I think there's an impact angle and like investment strategy angle. So from impact angle, we are supporting founders at the very early stages, which means that we actually are bringing certain innovations that maybe otherwise wouldn't even be possible to bring to the market. So this is very important for us from an impact perspective, and we are accelerating bringing these innovations and transforming the industry, transforming the products for the better. From the investment strategy angle, I think, of course, this is more risky stage of investment. You could argue that this is the most risky stage of investment at this very, very early stages. So we have to, of course, mitigate it. So we have to select, the founders. We have very specific selection process for the founder, where many of them have experience in this specific industry, either from scientific perspective or industry experience. And also, on the other hand, the risk-reward ratio must be recognized here for this early stage investments. So this also often means lower valuations to recognize this.
So what kind of sums are you investing in these First Bite startups, and what kind of form does the investment typically take?
It's typically, our range is about $50,000 to $150,000 for these investments, and most typical common form would be SAFE or convertible note.
Right.
And the reason for this is simply because it's the fastest, easiest way to close this investment, and also fastest way to get money to the founder so they can start really building their first prototype or product.
So how many companies are you looking to back through First Bite per year? And maybe could you give us a flavor of some of the companies you've backed through this scheme?
We don't have like a fixed number or fixed number of slots. We so far invested in 7 companies via First Bite. And what we are seeing right now is that especially in plant-based industry or overall in alternative protein industry, to increase consumer adoption, we need to improve taste and texture of the products. So a lot of investments that we made recently via this program really have to do with that, with how do we improve the products. So for example, we invested in a company from Singapore called Allium Bio, and they are co-fermenting or co-culturing microalgae and mycelium and producing ingredients that have better functionality and better taste than the current base ingredients for some of these products. We invested in a company called Fantastic that is doing better fat. So it's often underappreciated how important the fat is in the products, especially in plant-based meat products, but also dairy products. So they found technology to improve this fat, and through this improving the mouthfeel of the products. And one of the recent investments is also a company called Everything But from South Korea, and they are focusing Asia's first cultivated meat startup that is focusing on pet food. And pet food is another sort of underappreciated part of the broader protein industry. So there are about 1 billion dogs and cats globally, and the fastest growing number of pets is actually in Asia. So we think that the impact of diets that are often meat heavy, of course, for these pets is huge environmental impact, and it needs to be addressed. So this company is working on cultivated and hybrid products that can help to lower carbon footprint of pet food.